Well, good afternoon, good evening, everyone who is still with us out there. Great to see the number of people that have hung in through the day. What a great day it's been so far. It's going to just get better with this one more presentation. It's really exciting for me to have the opportunity to introduce Dr. Akilah Carter-Francique, someone whose work I admire. So it's kind of fun to get to do that this afternoon. And to know that, I'm a baseball person, so I'm like, you're the greatest cleanup hitter for today. All right, for today's presentation.
Thank you.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and you've got a brief bio, which is way brief. You've done so much more, but I'll share that with everyone, and then I will turn it over to you. And the typical setup for the day, about 30 minutes from you, and then we open it up for a Q&A, and of course, people are free to put in thoughts in the chat and in the Q&A. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. Well, welcome everyone again. So I'll give you a little background on our speaker here. So Dr. Akilah Carter-Francique, it's a PhD from the University of Georgia, is the executive director for the Institute for the Study of Sport, Society, and Social Change at San Jose State University, where she is an associate professor in the Department of African American Studies. Her scholarly endeavors and field of focus encompass the intersection of sport, society, and social justice that is inclusive of issues of diversity, social movements, and the dynamics of social change and development. She served as the 2018-2019 president of the North American Society for the Sociology of Sport, and currently serves as a member of Laureus's Sport for Good Research Council in the United States. She's the co-editor of Athletic Experience at Historically Black Colleges and Universities, Past, Present, and Persistence, and also Critical Race Theory, Black Athletic Experiences in the United States. I know some of my PhD students have referred to this. So that is awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get out of the road and turn it on over to you.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to take a big I have been up and on with you all since the beginning. I'm over here in California, so operating on that West Coast time, but it has been truly, gosh, an amazing 2 days to be on and hear the commentary from our professional athletes, the Olympic athletes, the panel today. If anything, it's just really, I'm going to go to the screen here, but it's really just reminded me of all sport has done for me. I started at the age of 5 years old, running after my brother, and he was at track meets all the time. And my mom was basically saying, listen, she's running around here in circles. Let's just put her on the track. And so that was kind of my entree into sport and sport participation, and probably following one of my first mentors, which is familiar, was my brother, and being guided by both of my parents, who K-12 educators. So gotta love them for that. But no, such great speakers today. Thank you for having me, Mary, Eli, the Muhammad Ali Center. This is a great opportunity, and I'm really appreciative of it. I'm taking more notes than anything. So again, we did have some great presentations. We heard a lot today, and I'm here representing the Institute for the Study of Sport, Society, and Social Change at San Jose State University. That was started in 2017 as a brainchild of Dr. Harry Edwards. And the title, I think, speaks for itself. It was started in 2017. I did not onboard until last year, last fall. So it's been an interesting first year in the wake of COVID. It has just been amazing. But at the Institute, again, known for the town hall discussions with such great individuals as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Tommy Smith, John Carlos, Chris Webber, Jim Brown, as we see here, and just some great individuals that have come to speak. Even Ann Lieberman came from Athlete Ally. And so we've had a wonderful range of topics and issues that we've discussed at the Institute to really keep the conversation going. And so today I want to keep the conversation going and talk about some of the things that we've been doing at the Institute, which is, again, is engaging and working with individuals to take the conversation from our kind of private conversations as academics and into your households, as we've seen here using our virtual platform. We, over the past few months, have launched our Sport Conversations for Change. So talked about women in sport, talked about HBCUs, talked about the challenges that high school athletes are facing during this time and decisions that they have to make, as well, again, as our Olympians and what they need to, or what they have done to hopefully inspire our younger athletes to continue to press forward despite the challenges of canceled seasons and seasons that have ended, as we're seeing approach this upcoming fall. And so our goal is to educate, and not only educate, but mentor. So on the topic of mentoring, I kind of just wanted to bring everything to sort of a close of what has been shared over these past few days. If we look here, the history and definition of mentoring falls into this notion of a mentor is generally used as a person that means a teacher, an advisor, a sponsor, really stemming from these Greek times. And we have heard a number of individuals that have spoken about the importance of individuals that have served in that role for them, okay? In the world of sport, I'm doing a little plug for you there, Mary. Sport and sport management, where I had my first teaching stint, was in sport management, even though my degree is in sport studies. But in sport management, we teach our students. We teach our students and talk to them and provide definitions and the notion of what is mentoring in sport. Cheladora, who's been mentioned today, talks about it as a process in which a more experienced person serves as a role model, providing guidance and support to a developing novice, right? A sponsor that individuals' career progress. And so in the sport world, mentoring does play a role. Mentoring is definitely key and important. How has it played itself out? I think we've seen it in a number of ways, with sort of its initial purpose of being to provide, existing to provide development and support for persons in career and, again, psychosocial understandings. And this is also under this notion of they can either be formal programs or informal engagements, as we've heard, right? So nothing new, we've mentioned all that today, but how did I get into it? Interesting enough, I've been mentored again throughout my life. Again, it did start in the home, as many people talked about over conversations today. But then my academic interest, my scholarly interest into mentoring started when I stepped foot on Texas A&M for the first time. First day of orientation, someone came to me from the athletic department. It's like, we've been looking for you. And I'm like, well, who are you? And they said, we got your name from someone. We've got an athlete here we're recruiting who happened to be the niece of one of my teammates at University of Houston. Wanted me to, come in and help recruit. But at the same time, they had another athlete that they wanted me to help mentor. Long story short, go to an event, meet the young lady for mentoring. She texts me immediately. I'm like, I haven't even walked 5 feet from you. But it was this thirst, this drive to obtain somebody and see somebody that looked like them and help them navigate. Well, that one person turned into 4, then it turned into 10, then it turned into much more. and to Farlone's point, my bandwidth was just already spread thin, and being a new faculty, it was kind of like, oh no, don't do this. But I wanted to help. It was something that was inherent in me. And so one of the things I did is work with one of my colleagues, Dr. Denise Dortch, and we developed a program called Sister to Sister, and to sort of speak to the needs of these young women. But in that, I also wanted to research and kind of understand more what were the specific needs of these Black female athletes in particular. What I found is that, again, career support was key, right? Psychosocial support was key, but so was their athletic selves. And so in taking that a step further, I researched and tried to understand what were their needs as we began to cultivate and design this program. And what I found is that they had a firm understanding of what mentorship was. Again, all that we mentioned: guide, role model. They understood what they needed from a career support standpoint, and what that consisted of for them. They needed somebody to speak to, and this role of career fell under the notion of academic engagement, if you will. But they knew they needed support. They had a strong work ethic. They wanted somebody to be there for them, to support them in those spaces. from a psychosocial support, they understood and recognized that they needed help and assistance with life issues and development, their athletic concerns as well. Relationships, as we all know, in college can be a little bit challenging, as well as dealing and navigating with issues of being sort of isolated and alienated from the greater campus, one, due to their athleticism, but also due to their race and their gender, and particularly on a predominantly white or historically white campus. And then finally, on the athletic side, they were getting that, they had that. And that was typically found within coaches with regard to athletic development, athletic concerns, and personal development. But interesting enough, what we found, my colleague, Algerian Hart, and I found was that many of their mentors were familiar. It was mom, it was auntie, it was dad. And these were individuals that, again, had not necessarily been college students or even student athletes for that matter, but that's where they were seeking most of their support from. And so in many ways, they were guided on some different social issues, but didn't have the support they needed when we talked about navigating that athletic terrain. I began to dive deeper into this. My dissertation coming to the university sort of dealt with this notion of mentoring, focused on identity negotiation. So I already knew that race and gender were issues that Black females were having to navigate. But even being on an athletic campus at a predominantly white university in a city that did not have many cultural spaces for them also created those challenges. So often having racist interactions or sexist interactions that limited and isolated, again, them from their daily engagements, if you will. They gave me their voice, again, on their perspectives of mentoring. But what I began to see is that there was a need to, and as many of our guests have shared today, to provide some culturally relevant programming for them. I spoke to this notion of ethic of care, and what does that really mean about having empathy, understanding the concern, understanding the value of voice, understanding a safe space for these young women. And so really began to delve into that and providing spaces that were community, if you will. So Sister to Sister was a community mentoring program, allowed them to come together because, again, being an N of 40 on a campus of 48,000 can be quite isolating. And then finally sort of delved into this notion, again, of understanding their environments and the fact of what they bring to campus with respect to the social capital that they brought to campus and the need and social support that they required, but again, needed to be culturally relevant, speaking to the words and the terms of Gloria Ladson Billings, and really promoting an opportunity for that dream keeper, if you will. So when we look at these organizations that came and spoke to us, today, I got so much from them. I want to thank each and every one of them. I was taking copious notes and, was trying to listen at the same time. But what each of these organizations helped us understand is that, sport and this sport for development space refers to the use of sport as a tool for development and peace, obviously, but that we found that sport has a unique ability really to captivate, right? Captivate children, schools, communities, and nations in a way that oftentimes sport has been underutilized to develop these young people. But we heard about, academic engagement being promoted. We heard about identity development being promoted. We heard about this notion of really understanding the world and from a global space when we talk about the global sport mentoring program. And so all of these things are really important when we think about our students today and the platform and the possibility of mentoring in sport. As we know, there's mentor and mentee benefits, and I think Farlone and Batuli did a great job in sort of sharing that. And so did the others in talking about sort of the mentor-mentee benefits. One of the things I wanted to do here was sort of highlight, things that we already know, that the mentor can help that mentee through various stages of their development. But even that mentor is gaining, they are learning. It's a reflective opportunity for their own personal goals and their best practices as being a mentor. They're exposed to, as we all have heard today, fresh perspectives and ideas and approaches from young people. It became a development, right, of their own personal leadership styles. And then ultimate goal is seeing that mentee succeed. But for the mentee, they receive benefit as well. Emotional and psychological support, again, as the definition intimates, access to an example of a role model, guidance on developing strengths and overcoming weaknesses. And they are too open to new ideas and new ways of thinking. I think when we look at all of this, one of the things I want to sort of just keep in mind and push is that if we think of, again, as this notion of mentee centered, right, as we heard earlier today, we can shift that power dynamic to be equal, synergistic, and symbiotic, if you will. And so, again, equal footing. The relationship of mentoring. We heard a lot of that discussion today. And that's something that we really have to hold on to. It is a relationship. Some of these relationships are forged at a young age. I think as Lex Gillette shared, you know, his mentoring relationship started around the age of 3. And these are things that we have to, again, grow and nurture, understanding that that mentor-mentee relationship is one that we have to nurture the quality of that, and understanding that at the end of the day, it has to be one that's sort of built on trust. And do we trust that individual to care for us, to provide us feedback, and feedback that often can be critical, that we always don't want to hear. And so to identify those individuals that can sort of bring that to us. And it becomes a growth process as well. So sometimes we may start with some individuals that are going to give us a lot of yeses, but we have to start integrating and finding other individuals to support our mentoring. As I say, constellation mentoring, having more than one mentor that can definitely help build us up. When we talk about these relationships, I think one of the things I really want to hone in on is that it is one of, again, establishing this sense of trust with one another. We want to make sure that, again, I think as everyone shared, not being taken advantage of. We often come into some relationships, again, with trauma, so as not to repeat it, but finding individuals that you can trust, that you can grow with, that are going to be individuals that inspire you, individuals that recognize that you have a dream or a vision and aren't necessarily trying to make you in their image, but are trying to guide you and support you on your way towards fulfilling your dreams and being empowered. When we think about it from, again, promoting and giving the advice of getting the skill sets that are necessary. So even though we're in that sport context, we heard, again, many of these groups working with young people to build academic engagement, promote reading, promote skill, promote service. And then ultimately what they're doing in those relationships, they are introducing and promoting networks for these young people that we see. So sport in a diverse world, kind of coming to the topic of what I wanted to share, is very important. Diversity, as we're seeing, understanding and recognizing and acknowledging everyone's culture for who and what they are. From an education perspective, again, diversity is sort of looked at as this sum of ways that people are both alike and different. And thus the dimension of diversity include race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, language, culture, religion, mental and physical ability, class, and immigration status. And our panel and our speakers did such a great job of expressing all of this in each and everything way that they do. Gosh, when we talk about that, we've got to think about diversity being more than just diversity and inclusion. It has to move beyond that. It has to move beyond into this notion of what I've really welcomed over the past few years of inclusive excellence, of embracing each and every person for who they are. For when we talk about this inclusiveness, we're not only providing access into opportunities, we're providing and setting up a space that will support this notion of equity. So what does your mission statement look like? What do you believe? What are you sort of creating as far as a culture for the individuals that you engage with? And then what are you doing to promote inclusion and even retention of people on your campuses and in your spaces? And a lot of that inclusion and that retention revolve around this notion of sense of belonging. We heard that term mentioned a few times today. And so I want to spend a little time sort of settling in to this notion of sense of belonging. This was adopted by and created by Terrell Strayhorn, who talks about perceived social support on campus or in your organization, a feeling or sensation of connectedness, the experience of mattering, feeling cared about, accepted, respected, valued by, and important to the group or community. Sense of belonging are what each and every one of these groups talked about today and what they try to encourage. But what does it more specifically consist of? 7 things in particular. A sense of belonging, understanding that it is this basic need, basic human need. Everybody wants to feel like they belong, like they matter, right? It becomes, again, this sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, of feeling like that their individual self is contributing to society in some way, shape, or form. And as Farlone said, that they have a purpose, if you will, in life and in that space with you. A sense of belonging takes on this heightened importance of definitely being valued within your respective communities. When we think about this sense of belonging, it's also ultimately, do I matter in this space, and having to acknowledge them and that individual in some way, shape, or form. This sense of belonging also, again, welcomes that individual, moving from this notion of this colorblind racism that people have been talking about as we're in this Black Lives Matter space, but to really understanding that your identity brings value. Your race, your ethnicity, your ability, your social class, your voice, your language, your thoughts, your ideas, creating that in that space, that you're more than just an athlete, right? That you give more to this space than just your athletic and your physical self. Understanding that a sense of belonging can, when you do that and embrace that, it's gonna begin to undergird and empower young people to do new things, to create new endeavors. They may be more engaged with their academics. They may be more engaged in building positive relationships with one another. And at the end of the day, to understand that when we foster this sense of belonging, when we create and cultivate the sense of belonging, it has to be ongoing. It's not a one-off. It's not a simple training. It's not a, oh, I checked that box. We have to be able to embrace and engage our young people for the duration. Even if it's for a moment of time. I think Eaton Thomas said, again, not every individual that we touch will go on to be a professional athlete, will go on to even be a college athlete. And so while we have them in our care for that time, I think we owe it to them to provide a space where they can feel loved and be loved. How does that work? And how can that begin to sort of inspire some new and exciting engagements, particularly when we talk about social movements? These 2 hours of engagement gave us that, talked about building that space. And I have to kind of say thank you for giving a shout out to the women. Because again, when we talk about social movements and social engagement, and I actually just finished a chapter talking about Muhammad Ali, but in doing so, I wanted to highlight the women that were also around during that time period that gave of themselves. Erosina Robinson, Erling Brown, when we talk about the Tennessee Tiger Bells, and they're just mere representation, as Ms. Muhammad talked about, as being an act of resistance. To understand that we are creating a space where these young people can be more than athletes, that they can engage in social change, that they can be future leaders. And I wanted to pull this in, and this is from the Anti-Defamation League. And what does this notion of social change look like? Many know social change, and many of our young people sort of align social change with the fact that I have to be out there and protest. I have to demonstrate. That's the only way that I can show that. I think they have a lot of things coming across their social media that, your silence or your act of not going out and protesting is standing up for the other side. But I want them to know that there are many people, when we talk about movements, social movements, that dedicated themselves to educating one another, to advocating for legislation, for running for political office, for creating public awareness and campaigns. And young people are doing this now through using social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook, to do surveys about an issue and share those results, to raise money, as we're hearing about, through GoFundMe. I think of the wonderful students from San Jose State University, that student athletes that got together during this time for Black Lives Matter and sought out to, I believe, raise $1,000 and raise like $78,000 to go to Black Lives Matter. That's a role and a step for social change and social activism. Writing letters, engaging in community service, and at the end of the day, doing their best to get the press involved and using their sport and their platform to promote social change. So what we believe at the Institute is this notion, words to action. We have to move from words to action. We've talked a lot here today. How do we move from this notion of words to action? And I'm gonna skip past this one real quick. I think one of the ways that we do it, we create these programs. We continue to endorse all the individuals that have been here today, the individuals that spoke yesterday, our professional athletes, our Olympic athletes, and their respective platforms that they're using to give a voice, promote these programs. But the programs must be, even if you want to start one, they must be, as we've talked about, be developmentally appropriate. If you're working with young people, they've got to speak and address their needs. If you're working with older individuals, college age, those that are in pro, they've got to be appropriate for that engagement. And that is something, again, once you forge that mentor-mentee relationship, that is addressed in the beginning, okay? And so you know what that relationship is. Also understanding at some point it may end. And so we heard about that, and understanding that it's okay to, if you move on and begin to meet with and get encouraged by another mentor. The goal is that we give you the tools. We give you the tools to put in your toolkit to continue on to achieve your purpose. Secondly, that the program is educative. It's one that's educative and holistic, not just speaking into giving you knowledge and giving you skill sets, but also that we're speaking to the whole person, just not one part of ourselves. And last but not least, this notion of being culturally relevant. I use it in my work, talking about culturally relevant pedagogy, using critical race theory, using Black feminist thought. But we heard Ubuntu today, we heard strength-based, we heard value-based, we heard that mindfulness that needs to take place. All of those things need to come together. Understand your population, understand your students, give them the gift of you, and help them become who they're going to be, using their platform as athletes and more to, again, affect this social change. I'm gonna cut it short here and get into some mentoring resources that I think would be available and supportive for anyone that's starting a program, from John C. Maxwell all the way to, again, understanding and recognizing, acknowledging this notion of diversity that we are having really bold conversations about, anti-racism conversations, right? How do we do that? But speaking into our young people with mentoring one-on-one, mentoring matters, the mentor leader, when we talk about Tony Dungy, and then pulling from sort of those critical pieces, as we've heard today, that are definitely necessary and can help empower and embolden our young people for change. So I want to end with this. We're at the Muhammad Ali Center. We've all given life and breath to support a young person. Again, for me, it started at the age of 5 through my parents, on up through college, through my track coach, Tom Tellez, on into my doctoral studies with Dr. Billy Hawkins, who I have to just give a big hand clap to, even to where I am now, working with Dr. Harry Edwards in the Institute, but all those that even shaped me along the way, to include the individuals on this call, Dr. Holmes, Eli Wolf. I definitely appreciate what you said. But I think the words of Muhammad Ali will end it best for me. And so just take a moment and listen to this.
What would you like people to think about you when you've gone?
I'd like for them to say he took a few cups of love. He took 1 tablespoon of patience, 1 teaspoon of generosity, 1 pint of kindness. He took 1 quart of laughter, 1 pinch of concern, and then he mixed willingness with happiness. He added lots of faith, and he stirred it up well. Then he spread it over a span of a lifetime, and he served it to each and every deserving person he met.
Muhammad Ali, thank you very much.
His recipe for life is something that I think we have to welcome and appreciate. And so I'll end with that today and open us up to questions. Hopefully I stayed on time.
You were awesome on time. You were directly on time. Yeah, so we will, again, as always, open up the chat for questions and comments. We're getting lots of people that are saying, this is great. They're wanting links to what you've put up.
Okay.
Love this great clip. Yeah, the Muhammad Ali clip, that's an awesome one. I mean,
yeah, I couldn't pass that up. I think, who better to say or kind of speak for him than himself,
mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that this whole mentoring session is about is how everyone has planted a seed, as we've talked about. We sort of use the planting metaphor, but I think of it as cooking, providing those different ingredients to help that individual become the best person and the best representation of themselves possible.
Yeah, and I think, when we talk about thinking about Ali's recipe there, that one of the big ingredients, and when we talk about mentoring, is when we add that ingredient of trust.
Mm-hmm.
And how that has to really, that really has to be in there for mentoring relationships to work on both ends. What do you think?
I definitely truly believe that. And I think one of the things that really started solidifying it's when my nephew and even my kids, just seeing them interact with somebody for the first time, they can sort of tell your spirit, your authentic spirit immediately. And so knowing that a child can read it at a young age of 3,
mm-hmm.
Then we definitely think when you become, 13, 14, 15, 19, 20, you can begin to discern someone's spirit and their intent for you. And so trust is definitely important to even listen to, to take guidance from. And, I think it's worth just helping them understand that you're going to give the best advice and that you're not going to steer them the wrong way. And so I think from a mentor perspective, that openness and honesty have to definitely come through to say, hey, I'm not equipped, which I've definitely told some people,
mm-hmm.
hey, I can help you in this area, but let me refer you to this person. Let me refer you to that person, and being okay with that. And the young person even saying, if someone, I appreciate what Matt said, if you have someone that says, no, I do not want to be your mentor, take it as, hey, that's great, because now we know where we're at and we can move on to someone else. But we've got to be honest with ourselves and with our interactions.
Yeah, honest and genuine with,
yes.
with who we are. We have a question here from Dr. Julius Hanks. What strategies do you suggest for young professionals who find themselves unsure of the next step in their professional journey, especially as from an underrepresented population in academia? And then adds, thank you for being my mentor from a distance.
For me, I'll be honest, I'm still finding my footing, I think. I really see myself as sort of stepping out on faith each time I try something. I'm interested in so many different things. And I thank my mom and dad for giving me that curiosity. But it is one where I think you do have to sort of step out. But at the same time, as you step out, I have more than one mentor. I have a lot of people that I bounce things off of. I've mentioned again, Dr. Hawkins is one of them, but I have peer mentors that have helped me in my academic self and my sort of career journey as well. But even, individuals that I would consider sisters or teammates that have helped me. Seek guidance from all of them, but at the same time, if you feel that pull, if you feel that you have a certain life purpose, to step out, and it's worth stepping out and trying to experience that, because you never know where it will lead. And I think that's one of the things that my mom has given me is, just go try it. If you don't like it, you can always come back, but just go try it. I haven't necessarily abandoned my main trajectory, because again, income is important. But I've still ventured out and tried different conferences, gone to different workshops. I mean, since we've been in this virtual space, I've jumped on numerous webinars just to learn. and engage. I'm like, that's something I might explore. Maybe I'll go to that conference next year, So I think it's worth stepping out and sort of taking part of what you're interested in, because you never know where it can lead and how it can really come together. And that was one of the big things during my doctorate, is that I didn't know how I was going to blend my athletic self with me working in campus rec, with me getting this PhD. I didn't know how things would come together. They didn't come together immediately, but down the road, 10 years down the road, I'm seeing, oh, that's why. That's why I did that. Or here's where it's coming in handy now. So I think that's for me as a great opportunity, to just kind of step out and try it.
Mm-hmm. Now, is that the advice you give to your kids?
To my kids?
Yeah.
To my kids?
Mm-hmm. Step out.
Oh, yes. I mean, we know we pack backpacks and we just go. I'm like, where do you want to go today? And so we're adventurous. I mean, and so I don't want to, I had tons of pictures I wanted to share of them, but my husband and I have done I feel a great job of just trying to expose them whatever they're interested in. So if it's ride a skateboard, go to parks. We've traveled different places, but I really want them to seek things outside themselves. We're an international family, I'm here from the US, my husband's from Grenada, grandma lives in Canada, husband's studying overseas. So it's just one where let's just see. And if we like it, great. If we don't, well, we know we're not going to try that again. But I do my best to encourage them and to expose them to as much as possible.
Living the life of a mentor. Living the life of a mentor. One thing I wanted to ask of you, just to get your comment on, is we've talked about mentoring, and we've talked about it today in the context of sport.
Yes.
And Eli and I have often written about the power of sport, and how sport has the power to inform, the power to empower, and the power to transform. And we like to use that three sort of word definition with sport and its power. How do you see that fitting in to a mentoring relationship in sport?
Oh my gosh. I think I just kind of even take my personal. Sport has helped me so much. I was born with asthma. So even from a sort of a physical limitation, I learned how to control breathing in that space, if you will. But in that, I will say it forced me to sort of push through some life barriers. But it also brought me to a space where I wasn't always sure of what I could do or what I had the potential of doing. But I think sport has allowed me an opportunity to, again, take chances, to push my body to the limits, and then sort of push some more. And so sport for me has just been sort of a life metaphor. I keep coming back to it. It's something that conversations revolve around. But as we know, we study that sport is a microcosm of our society. But I think there's things that happen in sport that can allow us to, in some ways, kind of go through and sample things, and then let's try it out in our greater society and see how that works. I've seen, again, this mentoring just within this space, and had the potential to sort of reach out and touch young people, young women, help them understand that you are more than an athlete, that you are more than what society tells you, and to try to give them those tools. So again, with our program, my Sister to Sister that we started, it was one of, what brings you here is sport, but sport is something that you do. It's not necessarily who you are. And you can take the skill sets from sport, courage, heart, pushing through boundaries, and apply those to the things you do in your career, the things you do in life, and keep pushing through that. And so I've sort of used that metaphor of pushing through those barriers with the young people that I encounter. But I'll be quite honest, Dr. Hawkins was the one that kind of put me in that space.
Yeah.
Working on that dissertation. He was like, well, how do you prepare for competition? I'm like, well, I do this and do this. He's like, do the same thing. I'm like, oh, yes.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
So sport has really made me sort of push to those limits and try things that I wasn't, necessarily comfortable with. I've was a track and field athlete since age of 5, but I played volleyball. I participated in martial arts, you know, tried to dabble in softball a little bit, but it's also trying those things again that I never saw myself in. But at the same time, if I let those images and what people say that you're not supposed to be in that space, I would never try anything. And so sport has allowed that opportunity to experiment, if you will. And I've sort of adopted that into my life at the same time.
Yeah, and sport, because athletes are who they are, now, of course, they have a platform. And, you know, in the young people that you mentor, that I'm sure come to you these days and say, how can I use my voice? What do you tell them?
I tell them, what are you good at? You know, what do you like doing? What brings you joy? Because again, just like that diagram I showed, demonstrating, protesting is but one way. You know, if you're good at, you know, making bracelets or making clothing, you know, I heard Phaedra talk about, you know, clothing being something that she really embraced. If that's something that you're good at, take that with you. You can use your sport as a platform to demonstrate and to show that. If cooking is what you do, I've just been learning, listening to a podcast called Girl Trek that has been highlighting Black women in the movement. And one that they highlighted, her last name was Gilroy, and she made meals for people in the civil rights movement and during that time to help fund the drivers, right, during the bus boycott. If that's your comfort level, if that's where your talents and skills are, use them that way. So, you know, everybody is good at something. If you're good at organizing, organize. If you're good at writing letters, write letters. So use your platform the way you are best comfortable in doing.
Yeah, I always think in terms of, you know, we're academics, right?
Yes.
And people, oh, what can I do? What can I do? I always think that for anyone who's an academic that's listening, that as academics, we have the ability to do two things. We can speak and we can write. And maybe there's one of those we prefer more than the other, but we have those platforms. You know, for us to say, oh, I can't do anything. No, we can. We have those platforms open to us. And it's a challenge to use them, but it is. But it is fulfilling to use them and to use them in conjunction with our students. You know, I think is another way to look at it, how we can help our students use their voices. Then, you know, and particularly I work with training doctoral students who become faculty members. So making sure they hear that message loud and clear, they do, that they can make that difference. So we've gotten one more question here.
I wanted to.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Eli. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to be able to ask about sort of the intentionality. Matt and I have been kind of back and forth talking about kind of the call to action of bringing more intentionality to mentoring in the space of sport and social change, because sometimes it seems like, you know, mentoring is a critical component, but it's not in there. You know, like if you look at like sustainable development goals, mentoring is nowhere to be found. So like there's all these aspects of human development and so forth, but we aren't really always finding mentoring in that. And so how do we bring, you know, I feel like these last 2 days we've really been kind of making this case, but I feel like Akilah, the way that you were able to kind of break it down, do you feel like this call to, like, how do you feel like the call to action that we're, you know, coming out of these 2 days, and like this notion of intentionality and like the fact that mentoring is so important, but sometimes you just don't see it. And so I'm curious.
Yeah, it may, in many ways, it may look different. So, you know, I think one of the things is I've always tried to incorporate mentoring with what I do on a day-to-day. With regard to the Institute, you know, my goal is to, as we're building, is to create these pockets where we can engage with young people. And it may be through creating a research seminar, you know, and we're teaching them how to use their voice and use their platform through writing, as Mary talked about. But you can create things from a programmatic standpoint that are still engaging young people and sort of using their voice. I'm going to be meeting with some students here next week, which I'm so excited for, that were part of this, the SJSU movement of social justice. And so I'm looking forward to just even having engagements with them, but that's got to be something purposeful. That's something that you've got to be open to. And what we're doing at the Institute, that's our goal, is to open our doors to those conversations. Yes, we're having those sport conversations for change and bringing, experts in the field in, but then it's taking it to the young people, collaborating, having intentional collaborations with people that are like-minded, that may have student groups. And so I'm, reaching out to local community organizations within the San Jose area that have young people that we can engage. And I've started doing a social justice workshop with them to talk about, what are you interested in? And these students aren't athletes, they're just young people in the community. But it's interesting to me how sport is a connective piece that can be used in our society. I mean, we were asked by a biotech firm to give a speech on diversity. I'm like, I don't even know what you guys do. But the connecting piece was that everybody can find some commonality around sport. They understand the metaphor of sport. And so, being intentional, and again, it may not be called mentoring program. It may be called something else, but you're using that in an intentional way to inform, to engage, hopefully to inspire, right? And to get them on board with creating social change in their own way.
Great. Well, that, what a wonderful way to wrap up here today. You delivered. We had your back clean up. You hit it out of the park. All right, in terms of bringing everything together. So thank you for being the person who was at this point in our day able to tie things together, able to keep us energized right up till almost to the end. And I'm going to turn it over. So thank you.
Thank you so much, each and every one of you.
Yeah, and I'm going to turn it back to you. Don't leave.
Now I'm going to turn it to stay on with us. We're going to actually.
I'll hang out.
Stay. We're just going to go into a short closing, and I'm going to turn it over to Aaron, and then Aaron and Matt, and just to share, some reflections, and then Mary and I can.
And I've got to get down there to see the museum. We're a museum family, and I got to get one of those T-shirts from Matt.
Yes.
So I can promote
both sides.
mentoring.
We've talked about these 15-minute breaks at the end of every hour all day. So as all of the really ruthless and wonderful trainers do, we're mixing it up on you now. So instead of the break happening and then worrying about, having to come back for one more closing, what we're going to do is kind of just go right into an overtime session and have this closing happen now. And then we'll conclude a few minutes before 5:30. So for anyone who has other commitments, just wanting to everyone know that here. My goodness, from a mentoring field standpoint and working for an organization that exists to try to elevate the power of mentoring, I cannot imagine a more powerful and successful 2 days than what the Ali Center has been able to put together with Mary and Eli's help. And the idea that we got to have an opportunity to be a part of that means so much. Whereas an organization, we spend every minute of every day figuring out how do we get more adults engaged in the mentoring field? How do we improve our field? How do we do more for the young people we are all trying to serve? And it's moments like this that go from that steady growth that we're aiming for to creating those spikes. And the what can we do from here piece is something that all of the posts after this event from Mentor are going to include a tool that we have called the Mentoring Connector. And this is for our United States audience, but whether you're in Boise, Idaho, or San Jose, or Boston, or Miami, you put in your zip code and you can see a list of all of the local mentoring programs and choose the one that feels right for you to step up and get involved. So please share that messaging, not just for the audience that's with us still now, but for all of your networks. For those that haven't yet had that opportunity to be a mentor, but think they might be ready, there are 2,000 plus mentoring programs around the United States in desperate need of your support. So there are young people on waiting lists at just about every program. And the idea of stepping up is something that we are trying to do on a daily basis. And then when we have wonderful opportunities like this event, it's when we know we're going to make a difference, because some of those young people who are this week on a waiting list soon are going to be able to be matched with a mentor who can help them along their journey and help them in all the ways that we've talked about, not in some saviorism complex way, but just in terms of being there as a caring adult. So I'm just so full of appreciation for those that have stuck with us, and for the Ali Center for their leadership in bringing mentorship to the forefront over these last 2 days.
Thanks, Matt. I'll go ahead and I'll chime in here. First of all, I want to say really the thanks should go to the team, because the Ali Center was a team member in a collective effort. So to Matt and to Mentor, to Dr. Mary Hums, to Eli, of course, my final thanks to all of you, because this was an incredible 2 days. I have pages of notes that I'm not going to be able to debrief on right now. But let me say 2 things. One, personally, I started my comments this morning talking about our new Swimmer Scholar program. And this has personally been so enriching. And I've taken so many resources from all of our amazing speakers and panelists and organizations that have participated that we will directly take to this program, and I will take to our coaches and to our team, and develop that program. So I just want to say thank you, because it's been incredibly professionally and personally enriching for me. In my thinking and reflecting on the notes I took today, one of the areas that really stood out to me, or a theme that I found that came through, was this idea of, well, I'll start with what Lawrence said. Lawrence talked about the idea that sometimes we try to define ourselves as one thing. An athlete who defines themselves as just an athlete is in an unstable position. And then our 2 emerging young leaders who should really just be called leaders at this point, because they were incredible, talked about cultivating safe space and young people not feeling that they could make mistakes, and the idea of fear holding you back, the fear of trying something new, of stepping into a new space, and how a mentor intersected in those areas for them, and how they've become mentors in those areas. And then I was thinking about how Lauren from Women's Sports Foundation talked about now the intersection of athlete and activist, that we're not going to see that separation, that forced separation anymore. And it sort of occurred to me that mentorship is really about helping people cultivate their wholeness, right? Both as mentors and as mentees. It's about developing us into whole, rich people. And that's such an incredible and profound takeaway for me personally. At the center, we always talk about how we can develop our personal greatness, of course, because Muhammad was the GOAT. But I think that's also about our wholeness and allowing ourselves to be these rich, contradictory, varied, beautiful, complicated people. And the power of mentorship to be able to support that, I think, is just really profound. So on behalf of the Ali Center, I'm incredibly grateful. I sincerely hope that we can get together in person again, that we can all come together at the center sooner rather than later. Maybe it's in a hybrid form, maybe we can do digital and we can come together in person. But I hope someday to be able to meet all of you. And I welcome you, and you have a standing invitation to join us in Muhammad's hometown anytime.
Yeah, thank you. I was also just going to share that just the team effort, and honestly, it's tired, because we really did. It's just amazing these last all the participants and the speakers, and it was just a really amazing collaborative effort. I felt we kind of built, and just Akilah, you're amazing the way you kind of pulled it together to kind of help organize some things, and but yeah, I think, and also just thinking back again, I mentioned at the beginning about Dr. Lapchick, kind of how he helped kind of seed early on, but also just the fact that we were able to bring in such diverse stakeholders. You know, we did have practitioners, and we had scholars, we had you know, different media, we had all sorts of different angles and different aspects of the sector, and all with this kind of shared passion and shared recognition of that mentoring does deserve a place at the table, and mentoring is important. And I feel like we really did make the case, like these last 2 days. I feel like that's, you know, it's hard to refute that mentoring is indeed essential in this space. And so I feel like that really feels good that we kind of got to that point and we built that. And coming from the first, you know, the athletes, all those amazing statements, and the fact that they bounced off of each other, and the way that they shared how their stories were intersecting, and Lex, you know, as a Paralympian myself, you know, hearing Lex share that story about how he never saw John Carlos, but he could feel it. That was really, really, really powerful. And then just clearly all the athletes coming together, you know, that was just amazing. And all of us working together to find a way to bring these athletes together in a very kind of historic moment. Really, really amazing. And then, you know, for, you know, Mary and I just working collaboratively so many years, and all of our other colleagues, and just realizing the power and the potential and what's possible, and especially with great partners, you know, with the Muhammad Ali Center and all that it brings, and Mentor and all these other organizations that really rallied behind. So that's why, again, I think, Aaron, your point about it being a team effort, and Matt, you know, all of our collaborate, that's really, I think, has been what's made it so special. And I guess the final point I'll make is just, I do think that we were messaging each other about Farlone and Batuli, and just the youth and the young energy. And I feel like that was just such a, you know, really special session, really authentic and really powerful. But really, honestly, throughout the whole day, I was just blown away by every single session, and it really just came together. So I'd just like to thank everybody, and I guess turn it to Mary and any other remarks.
Yeah, and I would like to thank everybody as well, everyone at the Ali Center, with Mentor. This is awesome. And of course, Eli, you know, we've, again, worked together for over 20 years now. But one of the, you know, I thought about everything that we learned the last 2 days, and listening to people speak, hearing their thoughts about mentoring and about the future. And, you know, for me, a lot of the people that we brought in were younger than me. And that was awesome, because as I mentioned before, in one of my comments, what these 2 days gave me was renewed hope. And, you know, Lord knows we need hope now, don't we? And I know hope, some people say hope is not a strategy, but hope is something that can move us forward together. It can move us forward together. So hearing, you know, the energy, and hearing people talking about the connections that they make and their visions, and that just, bottom line, it gives me hope. And that is, I think, a very important thing to take away from this. So again, I thought the lineup was really great, really energetic, a nice mix of people. You know, we got some global representation, U.S. representation, younger, older people of different races, different genders, different abilities, and on down the line. So it was really wonderful. But again, for me, bottom line, I'm moving forward this weekend with hope. And I thank everybody, and I also thank all the attendees for that as well. We feel that you're out there, even if you didn't write a comment or you didn't make a comment. We know you're there. All right, that gives me hope too. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead, and I guess I'll turn it back to you. But again, thanks everybody, and Eli, I'll turn it back to you.
I mentioned this comment specifically to Susan for all of her chats throughout, but really for everybody. We talk a lot in the mentoring field that you demonstrate your values through your time. And I think for those that have spent the last 2 days with us in a time when we're all sick of being on Zooms to begin with, and now we've had long days, a time when we're ending the week, when there's a lot of things on our to-do list that aren't getting done right now because we've been here immersed with one another, how much it means that each of you gave up your time to be with us, to learn, to think about how to be better mentors, to have your programs inspire better mentors, all to help our young people to then one day be able to pay it forward themselves. It's this moment of really demonstrating our values through our time, the way that every mentor does every time they get to spend time with their mentee. But it's a rare conference where you get to demonstrate that just by your presence. And I feel like these last 2 days have been. So just want to say thank you to our audience that we know how hard it is to do what you all have done, especially without getting the breaks of having to kind of be on stage without that and having to just listen and write in your comments and those kind of things, just the way you've done it. Just a sincere thank you and appreciation.
Excellent. Thank you. I guess maybe Aaron, would you like to have a kind of a final comment, and then we can close?
I don't think I could say any more than I said other than thank you. This is just been very, very fulfilling. But Eli, I did want to mention, do you want to mention the videos and the follow-up and how people can stay connected and all of that?
Yes, we will, gather all the material and have the lists and all of that shared out as we've done and will do. And we're preparing the videos, and so within a week or so, we'll be, as soon as we're able to, we'll be pulling it all together and staying in touch with everybody. But yeah, no, it's just been a wonderful 2 days, and thank you all. And so I guess we'll be closing. Everyone can have a nice weekend and have some sleep and be with your families and friends. And but yeah, thank you all so much, and we'll see you and be in touch very soon.
Yeah.
Thank
you, everyone.
Yeah.